The notification lit up Leo's phone at exactly 2:47 a.m. A simple text message that would shatter his world. "I think there's something you need to see." Attached was a video clip from a security camera at the Meridian Hotel downtown, showing his wife Amanda walking into room 842, followed minutes later by Daniel Reynolds, his best friend since third grade. Leo watched the clip 17 times that night, each viewing burning the images deeper into his mind. The timestamp showed it was from 3 days ago, when Amanda had told him she was at a real estate conference in Phoenix. The conference he'd helped her prepare for. The conference he'd even packed her favorite power suit for. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat in his home office, surrounded by the photos of their 10-year marriage. Their wedding day at the Botanical Gardens. Their trip to Bali for their 5th anniversary. The housewarming party when they'd finally bought their dream home in the suburbs. Each memory now felt like a carefully crafted lie. The message had come from Marcus Zhang, a junior partner at Leo's investment firm. Marcus had been staying at the Meridian for a client meeting and recognized Amanda in the lobby. He debated for hours whether to tell Leo, finally deciding that if it were him, he'd want to know. Leo's first instinct was to confront Amanda immediately, to wake her up and demand answers. But as he sat there, watching the soft rise and fall of her chest as she slept peacefully in their bed, a different plan began to form. In business, Leo had learned that the most successful strategies required patience, preparation, and perfect timing. Why should personal matters be any different? The next morning, Leo kissed Amanda goodbye as she left for her real estate office, just like any other day. But instead of heading to his firm, he made a call to Catherine Martinez, the city's most ruthless private investigator. He'd used her services before for corporate due diligence. Now he needed her skills for something far more personal. "I need everything," he told her. "Every meeting, every call, every email. I want to know where the money's going, who she's talking to, what they're planning. Cost is not an issue." Catherine's investigation revealed more than Leo could have imagined. Not only had the affair been going on for nearly 8 months, but Amanda and Daniel had been meticulously planning Leo's financial destruction. They'd already consulted divorce attorneys, gathering evidence to paint Leo as a workaholic who neglected his marriage. Amanda had been documenting every late night at the office, every missed dinner, every cancelled weekend plan. But the real shock came when Catherine uncovered Amanda's secret bank accounts. Using her position as a real estate agent, Amanda had been running a sophisticated mortgage fraud scheme for years. She'd been falsifying loan applications, inflating property values, and taking kickbacks from straw buyers. The profits were being funneled through a network of shell companies, hidden from both the IRS and Leo. "She's good," Catherine admitted, handing over a thick file of evidence. But she got sloppy when she started rushing things with Daniel. Left too many trails. She's sitting on about $4 million in illegal profits, all carefully hidden. Well, hidden until now. Leo spent the next 2 weeks living a carefully choreographed performance. He worked late, just as Amanda expected. He remained distracted during dinner, playing the role of the neglectful husband she was documenting. He even accidentally left his phone unlocked, allowing her to see fake email exchanges with his partners about risky investments and potential regulatory issues. Meanwhile, he was setting his own pieces into motion. Anonymous tips to the IRS and FBI about Amanda's mortgage fraud. Quiet conversations with Daniel's gambling creditors, buying up his considerable debts. A private meeting with Amanda's potential divorce attorney, sharing just enough evidence of her illegal activities to ensure no reputable lawyer would touch her case. The confrontation, when it finally came, was orchestrated down to the smallest detail. Leo chose the evening of their anniversary dinner at Le Cirque, Amanda's favorite restaurant. She'd spent weeks planning it, seeing it as the perfect opportunity to serve him with divorce papers in public, maximizing his humiliation. Leo arrived early, ensuring everything was perfect. The private dining room was set exactly as Amanda had specified: white roses, vintage champagne, soft lighting. He'd even arranged for her favorite pianist to play in the corner. The stage was set. Amanda arrived wearing a new dress, her smile radiant as she took in the romantic setting. Daniel was waiting nearby at the bar, ready to play his part in her carefully planned drama. Neither of them noticed the federal agents scattered throughout the restaurant, nor the court courier waiting patiently by the coat check. "Before we order," Amanda said, reaching for her purse where Leo knew the divorce papers waited, "there's something we need to discuss." "Actually," Leo replied, his voice calm, "I believe these gentlemen have something to discuss with you first." On cue, 2 FBI agents approached their table, warrant in hand. Simultaneously, other agents moved to block Daniel's exit from the bar. The look of confusion on Amanda's face quickly transformed to horror as she read the warrant's contents: a detailed account of her mortgage fraud scheme, complete with transaction records, falsified documents, and testimony from her co-conspirators. But Leo wasn't finished. As Amanda was being read her rights, the court courier appeared, serving her with civil suits from 3 separate banks, the State Real Estate Board, and Leo himself. Each document had been carefully prepared to ensure maximum impact, targeting not just her freedom but her professional licenses, her assets, and her reputation. Daniel, watching Amanda's arrest from the bar, made a quick decision. When approached by the FBI, he immediately offered to cooperate, providing detailed statements about Amanda's fraud in exchange for leniency regarding his own minor role. His survival instinct proved stronger than any loyalty to Amanda, exactly as Leo had predicted. The aftermath unfolded like a perfectly executed business plan. Amanda's assets were frozen. Her real estate license was suspended pending investigation. The evidence Leo had gathered made any chance of her planned divorce strategy impossible. Instead, she found herself fighting criminal charges while simultaneously defending against civil suits that would eventually strip her of every dollar she'd hidden away. Daniel, true to his nature, disappeared once he'd secured his own deal with prosecutors. The gambling debts Leo had acquired were suddenly called due, forcing Daniel to relocate to his parents' home in Nebraska, his reputation in the industry destroyed. 6 months later, Leo sat in his office, reviewing the final divorce settlement. Amanda had been convicted on multiple counts of fraud and would spend the next 5 years in federal prison. The civil judgments had recovered most of her hidden assets, which would be returned to the defrauded banks. She would emerge from prison with nothing: no career, no savings, no future in real estate. That evening, he received an email from Amanda, sent through the prison's monitored system. It was a lengthy apology, filled with explanations and pleas for forgiveness. She claimed to have realized her mistakes, to have found clarity in her time behind bars. She suggested that perhaps, after she served her time, they could try again, rebuild what they had lost. Leo read the email twice before composing a simple response: "The funny thing about trust, Amanda, is that it's like a mirror. Once it's broken, you can try to piece it back together, but you'll always see the cracks. You didn't just break my trust, you shattered it completely. There's nothing left to rebuild." He paused before adding a final line: "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. Just know you won't find it with me." As he hit send, Leo felt no satisfaction, no joy in his revenge. Instead, he felt something he hadn't expected: peace. The kind of peace that comes not from winning, but from surviving, from knowing that no matter what someone takes from you, they can't take your dignity unless you let them. Later that night, as Leo stood on his balcony looking out over the city lights, his phone buzzed with a text from Catherine: "Client spotted at Nebraska bus station. Looks like he's heading east." Leo didn't need to ask who she meant. Daniel was running again, probably from new gambling debts. Some people never change. Leo deleted the message without responding. Daniel's story was no longer his concern. Neither was Amanda's. Their chapter in his life was finished, the book closed. Tomorrow, He would wake up and focus on his firm's upcoming merger, on his plans to expand into Asian markets, on the future he was building for himself. As he turned to head inside, Leo caught his reflection in the balcony door's glass. For the first time in months, he smiled, not the practiced smile he'd worn through the investigation and courtroom proceedings, but a genuine one. He had survived. More than that, he had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. The notification light on his phone blinked again. Another email from the prison system. Without opening it, Leo deleted it and blocked the address. Some stories don't need an epilogue. Some endings are better left final. In the months that followed, Leo's investment firm flourished. He channeled all his energy into work, earning a reputation not just for his financial acumen but for his ability to spot deception in potential deals. His experience had honed an already sharp instinct into something almost supernatural. Partners joked that trying to hide anything from Leo was like trying to fool a human lie detector. Occasionally, usually late at night when the office was empty, Leo would think about Amanda and Daniel, about the life he thought they'd all build together. The pain had faded, replaced by something closer to pity. They had each made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. As for forgiveness, Leo had learned that true forgiveness isn't about forgetting or excusing. It's about accepting what happened and choosing to move forward unburdened by anger or revenge. He had gotten his revenge, yes, but more importantly, he had gotten his life back, on his terms. The last time Leo heard anything about Amanda was through a court notice informing him that she had waived her right to appeal her conviction. The document joined all the others in a file marked closed, both literally and metaphorically. That evening, Leo finally took down the last photo of their wedding day from his office wall. As he placed it in a box bound for storage, he realized that sometimes the heaviest chains we carry are the memories we refuse to release. Life, Leo had discovered, has a way of teaching us exactly what we need to learn, even if the lessons come in packages we never would have chosen to open. His had taught him that while love might make you vulnerable, it shouldn't make you blind. That trust, once earned, must still be verified. And most importantly, that the best revenge isn't about destruction, it's about reconstruction. Building yourself into someone stronger than you were before. The story of Leo, Amanda, and Daniel became something of a cautionary tale in their social circle. People would whisper about it at parties, each version slightly different from the last. But Leo never corrected them, never offered his version. He didn't need to. He had lived his truth, and that was enough. As the city lights twinkled below his office window, Leo opened his laptop to review a new investment opportunity. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove that the best response to betrayal isn't letting it define you, but using it to redefine yourself. The cursor blinked on his screen, waiting for input. Leo began to type, focused entirely on the future. The past, with all its pain and lessons, had served its purpose. Now it was time to write a new story, his own. 1 year to the day after Amanda's conviction, Leo received an unexpected visit from her sister, Sarah. She arrived at his office unannounced, clutching a manila envelope and looking uncomfortable. "She asked me to give you this," Sarah said, placing the envelope on his desk. "She's been working with a prison therapist, trying to understand why she did what she did." The therapist suggested writing everything down, the whole truth, from the beginning. Leo stared at the envelope but didn't touch it. "Why now?" "Because she's dying, Leo. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She has maybe 6 months left." Sarah's voice cracked slightly. "She's not asking for forgiveness or a reunion. She just wants you to know the whole story before." She trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid. The envelope sat on Leo's desk for 3 days before he finally opened it. Inside was a handwritten journal, dozens of pages filled with Amanda's neat handwriting. It began with their first meeting at a charity gala 15 years ago and ended with her last night of freedom at Le Cirque. Reading it was like watching a car crash in slow motion, horrifying but impossible to look away from. Amanda detailed how her relationship with Daniel had started not as a romance, but as a desperate attempt to cover her growing gambling debts. She had gotten involved in a mortgage fraud scheme long before their marriage, seeing it as a temporary solution to her financial problems. But like quicksand, the deeper she got, the harder it became to escape. Daniel, it turned out, had been the one to suggest using Leo's assets to clear their debts. He had manipulated Amanda's guilt and fear, convincing her that Leo would eventually discover her crimes anyway. The divorce plan had been his idea, a way to secure enough money to pay off their creditors and start fresh. The final pages contained something Leo hadn't expected, a detailed account of every moment Amanda had genuinely loved him, every time she had wanted to confess but couldn't find the courage. It was a catalogue of missed opportunities and unspoken truths that left Leo feeling hollow. He wrote no response, sent no acknowledgement of receiving the journal. Instead, he instructed his lawyer to ensure that Amanda received proper medical care in prison. It wasn't forgiveness, it was basic humanity, nothing more. 3 months later, Sarah called to inform him that Amanda had passed away. The cancer had spread more aggressively than expected. In her final days, she had asked only one thing of her sister, to tell Leo that their marriage hadn't all been a lie, just its ending. The news stirred something unexpected in Leo. Not grief exactly, but a complex mixture of emotions he couldn't quite name. That night, he found himself pulling out their old wedding album, turning pages he hadn't looked at in years. Each photo seemed to tell two stories now, the one he had lived and the one Amanda had written about in her journal. A week after Amanda's passing, Leo received another surprise visitor, Daniel's teenage daughter, Emily. She had tracked Leo down through his firm's website, desperate to understand the story that had torn her family apart. "Dad never talks about what happened," she explained, fidgeting in the chair across from Leo's desk. "He just says it was complicated and he made mistakes. But I need to know. I'm old enough now." Looking at Emily, Leo saw shadows of both Daniel and Amanda, the same nervous energy, the same need for answers. He spent the next hour telling her a carefully edited version of events, focusing on the lessons rather than the details. The hardest part of betrayal, he told her, isn't the act itself. It's realizing that while you were planning a future with someone, they were planning a different future without you. But that doesn't mean all futures are ruined, just that one version of it. Emily left with a better understanding not just of what had happened, but of how choices ripple outward, affecting lives far beyond the immediate participants. Her visit prompted Leo to do something he had been considering for months, establish a foundation focused on financial literacy and gambling addiction support. The foundation, named simply New Chapter, would go on to help hundreds of people avoid the traps that had ensnared Amanda. Leo found a certain poetry in transforming his story of revenge into one of prevention and education. As his 50th birthday approached, Leo finally felt ready to consider dating again. His experience hadn't made him bitter, instead, it had made him more aware, more appreciative of genuine connections. He had learned that while trust might make you vulnerable, the alternative, never trusting at all, was its own kind of prison. The investigation skills he had developed during his revenge served him well in business, helping him spot potential fraud and deception in deals. His firm's reputation for integrity grew, attracting clients who valued transparency above all else. One morning, as Leo reviewed applications for the Foundation's scholarship program, he came across a familiar name, Emily Reynolds. Daniel's daughter had applied for funding to study psychology, hoping to become a counselor specializing in addiction and relationship trauma. Her essay described how witnessing the aftermath of her father's choices had shaped her desire to help others avoid similar paths. Leo approved her scholarship personally, seeing it as a way to transform the ending of his story into the beginning of someone else's. Years later, at a foundation fundraising event, Leo would tell potential donors that the best investments aren't always about financial returns. Sometimes, they're about investing in change, in the possibility that even the darkest experiences can lead to light. The cursor on his screen continued to blink, but Leo no longer saw it as just marking the end of one story. Now it represented the beginning of countless others, stories of prevention, redemption, and growth that his foundation would help write. He began to type again, this time drafting the foundation's annual report. The numbers told their own story: lives changed, addictions overcome, families preserved. It wasn't the future he had imagined when he married Amanda, but it was one he had built from the ashes of that dream. And perhaps that was the greatest revenge of all, not the destruction of those who had wronged him, but the construction of something meaningful from the wreckage they had left behind. 10 years after Amanda's passing, Leo stood at a podium in the grand ballroom of the Meridian Hotel, the very same hotel where his old life had begun to unravel. The irony wasn't lost on him as he addressed the gathered crowd at the New Chapter Foundation's decade anniversary gala. Among the attendees was Catherine Martinez, now retired from private investigation and serving on the foundation's board. She had transformed her own career, using her skills to help families locate loved ones lost to addiction rather than tracking unfaithful spouses. Emily Reynolds sat in the front row, now Dr. Reynolds, having completed her Ph.D. in clinical psychology. Her dissertation on the intergenerational impact of betrayal trauma had earned national recognition, and she had become one of the foundation's most valuable advisors. Even Marcus Jean was there, having risen to managing partner at Leo's firm. His decision to send that fateful video clip had changed not only Leo's life but his own. The trust between them had grown into an unshakable partnership that had helped their firm weather multiple financial crises. When I started this foundation, Leo began his speech, many people assumed it was about revenge, a way to remind certain people of their mistakes. They weren't entirely wrong, but they missed the bigger picture. This foundation was born from the understanding that every story of betrayal is also a story of before and after. What matters isn't the betrayal itself, but what we choose to do with the after. As he spoke, Leo couldn't help but think of Daniel, who had passed away 2 years earlier after a heart attack in a small Nebraska town. He had never managed to escape his gambling addiction, dying with nothing but debts and regrets. His story had become a cautionary tale in the Foundation's addiction recovery program. We've helped over 10,000 people in the past decade, Leo continued. People who found themselves trapped in patterns of destructive behavior, people who were on the verge of making decisions that would destroy their lives and the lives of those around them. But more importantly, we've helped them understand that it's never too late to change the narrative. The foundation had expanded beyond its initial focus, now offering programs in financial literacy for high school students, support groups for families affected by white-collar crime, and rehabilitation programs for gambling addicts. They had partnered with major banks to create early warning systems for potential fraud, and their research had influenced policy changes in the financial sector. After the gala, Leo returned to his office to find a letter waiting on his desk. It was from Sarah, Amanda's sister, who had become an unexpected ally in the foundation's work. She volunteered as a counselor for families dealing with the aftermath of betrayal, using her own experience to help others heal. The letter contained a photo she had found while cleaning out their parents' home, a snapshot from Leo and Amanda's wedding day that he had never seen before. It captured a moment just before the ceremony, Amanda looking at herself in a mirror, her expression a complex mixture of joy and fear. Sarah had written on the back, she was happy that day. That much was real. Leo placed the photo in his desk drawer without comment. He had long since learned that the past didn't need resolution to be finished. Sometimes, it just needed to be acknowledged and then set aside, making room for whatever came next. That evening, as he prepared to leave the office, his assistant reminded him of tomorrow's meeting with a potential new board member, Dr. Claire Mitchell, a renowned expert in organizational psychology. Leo had read her books on corporate culture and ethical decision-making, finding in them echoes of his own experiences. What he didn't know yet was that this meeting would mark the beginning of another chapter in his life. Claire would bring not only her expertise to the foundation but also a perspective that would challenge and expand its mission in ways Leo hadn't imagined. But that was tomorrow's story. For now, Leo stood at his office window, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled over the streets below. The view reminded him of that night years ago when he had first set his revenge in motion. The city looked the same, but he was different. Transformed not by the revenge itself, but by what he had chosen to create in its aftermath. The Foundation's logo caught his eye, reflected in the window glass, a simple phoenix rising from stylized flames. It served as a daily reminder that sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal isn't to destroy, but to rebuild. Not to seek vengeance, but to create value. Not to dwell in anger, but to invest in change. Leo smiled, thinking of all the lives touched by the Foundation, all the stories rewritten, all the futures reclaimed from the brink of disaster. His own story had become just one thread in a larger tapestry of transformation and renewal. The cursor on his computer screen still blinked, waiting for input. But now it no longer represented the end of a story or even its beginning. Instead, it marked a continuation, an ongoing narrative of growth, change, and the endless possibility of turning pain into purpose. Leo began to type, adding another chapter to a story that had grown far beyond revenge, beyond betrayal, beyond even redemption. It had become something else entirely, a testament to the human capacity for resilience, for reinvention, and for finding light in the darkest of places. And in the end, that was the real story worth telling.